Hey there, viewers on Twitch. Welcome back to the AWS Sydney Summit here at Darling Harbour. We are on day number 3 of this summit, and I'm sure a few of you out there are very interested in containers and container technology, and we've brought the right person for that job to explain all about containers and what's happening in the real world. I'm your host, Dean Samuels, and I'm joined by...
Dr. Pete. Hi, everybody. I've been here for quite a while, so you probably know my name, but we have the awesome guest here.
Yes, the man of the hour, of course, is David Angot from Atlassian. Maybe, David, you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm David, obviously. I've been working at Atlassian for about 5 years now. Mainly focusing on infrastructure and microservices and eventually containers and Kubernetes and all the things AWS.
All right, my kind of IT professional, infrastructure.
And in case you're living under a rock, who is Atlassian? Everyone should know the answer, but just in case you don't know.
I think so. Atlassian is a software company, and we do software pretty much for developers and for all the teams. Software that's just going to help your team with your workflow and collaboration tools, really.
Right. Olivier Klein, our head of emerging technologies this morning in his keynote, spoke a little bit about the evolution of compute with AWS from your virtual machine technology with Amazon EC2, then into the container space with Elastic Container Service or Amazon ECS, and also managed Kubernetes now with EKS. Then of course serverless is also a big story out there in the world. Can you maybe explain to the viewers first, what do we mean when we talk about containers?
Well, containers is Docker containers are like, it's probably more familiar to people. It's a way of like packaging and deploying applications. So that's what Docker really got popular. It's the way you package application with a single file pretty much, and then you share that, and then you can build in a reliable way. And so it's really about like, deploying and sharing applications in a consistent manner. And that's why containers are popular. Containers are a Linux thing.
Right.
It's basically a way of isolating your application running into or your virtual machine, your EC2 instance.
Yeah, and I know you're relieved, Dr. Pete, because Windows has Docker now, right?
It has containers as well. They're still kind of in beta, and you get large images. But one of the coolest features I think of containers really is the ability to be able to package your applications when you build them on your laptop, and then have your Docker files create the actual image, and it runs in production. Because how many times have we all done that? You've written your code, it works on your laptop, you hand it over to somebody else to run, and kabam, nothing works.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about that portability, right? On cloud as well as off cloud, like you mentioned, when you're on your laptop. and so, David, then for you, how did you get into the container space? How did your journey begin?
So, Atlassian, we're lucky enough that we actually have a really good platform as a service that runs on top of EC2, and containers got popular because it was easy for developers to deploy to that platform as a service. As you said, you build it on your laptop or you build it into a CI/CD system, and then after that straight to prod, and it's going to work. So eventually, instead of like packaging your application in a bit of a clunky way, Docker containers really kicked off rapidly about 4 years ago, and we were like early adopters with containers, and then never. Pretty much 90% of the deployments now are with containers.
Okay.
So you guys rolled out your own, right? You built everything yourselves.
Yeah. So
entire infrastructure.
And there's
so
something called Kata containers, right?
So you need that, you need that orchestration, and the next thing is Kubernetes, as you mentioned, with EKS, where you can move your containers around and then deploy them, and that's really cool. Kata containers is all about security. Having that extra level of security for containers. When you're going to have multiple containers running on the same EC2 instance, well, sometimes you may need that extra level of security.
Right.
And then I think that's what Kata is all about. It creates virtual machines inside those virtual machines. It's a bit of a, but it's a really cool technology, and it goes really well with AWS Firecracker that's been announced in November, which is really lightweight virtual machines for containers, basically virtual machine design for containers.
And for those who don't know what Firecracker is, it's actually what powers AWS Lambda serverless. It's been battle tested, and we actually open sourced it and made it available to customers to actually run it themselves.
And we're really excited about that. It's just lightning fast virtual machines that starts in matter of like milliseconds, and then you run your containers in that, and yeah, you can basically build your own Lambda if you want to.
So tell us more about the security model. So how did you guys go down, which path did you take around locking things down? Because security obviously is everyone's problem, from developers to the operations teams, to the people who are providing shared services for APIs. Spend a little bit more time on that, because I'd love to hear more.
Sure. Like, I think containers are actually quite secure, but you really have to treat them in the right way. I've seen too many people running the containers as root and not thinking about.
And that can end in tears, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, there was CVE, security incident, and things like that that could have been prevented for a lot of people if they were treated container the right way. Really thinking about security and. Yeah, there is a lot of mechanism to secure your containers. You can enable SE Linux drop capabilities and really have like your application running in a pretty hard sandbox environment. But you have to think about it.
And so then Kata helps users start on that security journey and putting in the controls. Do other folks outside of Atlassian have access to Kata as well? How do they get to start using it?
So we provide access to our Kubernetes clusters, and then we try to abstract everything for our developers with either platform as a service or a Kubernetes clusters API, and then my team is basically, our job is to run the infrastructure to make it completely transparent for our developers. And my job is to, if someone doesn't think about security, well, I have, and I've run those things into a sandbox virtual machines with Firecracker or Kata containers, or and yeah, that's really important for us. Is multiple layers of security.
So how would you recommend, if someone who's watching right now, how would you recommend as someone who's new to this to get started with Kata, perhaps on AWS?
I love EKS, and then like a good way of using EKS is, EKS takes away the complexity from Kubernetes. That's just, it makes it really easy.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And after that, it's just a matter of like, spinning up some EC2 instance and having Kata install. And then when I say install, it's really not that difficult to install Kata containers. Just pull down a package and let it talk to Kubernetes. And it's actually surprisingly easy to have that extra level of isolation and making those containers a little bit more secure.
So Kata's it's a little bit new.
It's very new.
Would you trust it in production?
It is open source, so anyone can get access and use, free to use. And
you would trust it in production? Yeah.
Well, it depends on who you ask.
A contentious question.
At Atlassians, we love bleeding edge technology, and then we're not shy, and we will make everything to. We will always be early adopters, so we will run it in production, yes. If you ask some of the more conservative people, I'm not going to name any industry, but there is some, maybe not yet. But for us at Atlassians, yeah, definitely is, and we're really excited about using either Firecracker and Kata containers.
Awesome.
Good. And so, Dr. Pete, maybe you could answer a question we got from Skull Crusher for Life. Thanks for the question, Skull Crusher.
Hit the egg timer. Good shot.
Any good guides by AWS on best practices for securing containers?
Look, we're part of the CNCF, which is the Cloud Native Foundation. So we spent a lot of time thinking about security. And at AWS, we talk about security being, job zero and also a shared responsibility. So certainly if you think about all other things, so yes, the answer is yes, there are guides. Go with the actual documentation. We've got a couple of white papers out there. But nothing really stops you from shooting yourself in the foot. There's different mechanisms of exposing the file system. So it's really important that you actually start slow and gain experience, evolve to the next level, right? And that way you are building muscle like you go to the gym. Start lifting the little weights before you start doing the heavy weight lifting. When it gets to some pretty serious public workloads and production level stuff, really think about doing, looking at the vectors for attacks and potential loopholes or gaps in your security models.
Right. It's all about just sort of starting early and MVP and then building on that.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you went through the same process, David.
Absolutely. Starting early is thinking security from day zero is really important.
But then I also imagine that along the way there was probably some obstacles or blockers as you were going through this journey.
Yeah, there's always blockers. We've started using it, and then we've done our homework. We're like, okay, we'll try all the new features that Kata containers provide, and we'll try to run in our EKS clusters, and and eventually we had roadblocks like performances.
Right.
When you start running things at scale with load, that's when you hit things that you haven't forecast. And then we were like, okay, well, we're going to have to pull the plug for a little while. And we went back to the Kata guys and said, hey, guys, we have this performance issue with disk, and it often is IOPS. And then, they helped us, and then we worked around it. But it happens all the time when you try something really new, with something really bleeding edge. You're going to have those, and you're going to have to find out the hard way because you're trying something new.
But it's all about the learning experience, right?
It is.
Yeah. Reinforcement learning for
Reinforcement
the humans?
learning,
So look, you guys are doing some amazing things at Atlassian. Anything else you can share with our viewers around some cool stuff, bleeding edge? Because what you guys do often ends up, being public and educational.
We've shared, we've open sourced a few of our projects around the container world. So we've open sourced, one of the guy was Atlassian Jerome, he wrote Cube to IAM like a few years back, which gives containers their own IAM roles. So that's again security. And we've recently open sourced Escalator, which is Kubernetes autoscaler, and then I was actually surprised today to see it's actually mentioned into the EKS documentation, so that was like, well, it's a bit of an achievement. And things we're looking at the moment are mainly around service mesh. So AWS App Mesh, we're looking at this, STO, service mesh is the new hotness, bleeding edge, again, something quite new to try. So in the container world, that's probably what we're looking at the moment.
Okay.
Fantastic.
And what about, usually have the conflict of, or contentious conversation of technologies, Linux versus Windows, Ruby versus Java. What about or containers or Kubernetes versus serverless? Do you think that's ever going to get into that type of conversation? You always hear, go serverless, go serverless, go serverless.
We have it internally. So we have that conversation internally where we have teams that are like, hey, we need serverless, so we're going to go Lambda, and we're like, well, look, we can probably do something for you guys. We run, absolutely. We actually trying Knative, which is a serverless framework to run on top of our Kubernetes clusters. But Lambda is just... it's just good, and it is easy to use. So eventually, yes, there will be this.
Well, there's always Fargate. There's always Fargate, right? There's always Fargate. Serverless containers, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's what we've been talking about all week, right? That you have all of these options and choices because it's really the best tool for the job, right? There's no one size fits all. So whether it is going to be a serverless type solution or a container, or maybe both, depending on where the microservices and the architecture resides, right? And so any last war stories or things that you'd like to share with the audience, especially as they go through their journey with containers?
Well, we had a few Kubernetes incident, and that's why I said, hey, if you can run on EKS, do it, because managing Kubernetes is quite hard, and then the storage of Kubernetes etcd is well, we haven't really sorted it yet, still, and then eventually we filled up the whole storage. There's actually a limit on etcd that we weren't aware of, and our cluster grew organically, and eventually we had a hard cap, and then we're like, well, what happened? And then everything went read-only, couldn't deploy anything. So we found out the problem, and then started deleting some old, things that you never really care about.
So management got you in the end, right?
Yeah.
But the GUMF that gets collected at CD.
Okay. So if you can.
That's a great war story. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Well, David, thank you so much for coming and sharing the stories of working with containers. Remember, Kata containers, you can find that's open source if you want to have a look at how to secure your containers, looking at whether it's your own do-it-yourself clustering or managed Kubernetes. Those options are practically endless. Thank you, David, once again, and thank you to the audience, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers.